it's very confounding for a lot of people, and you know the Warriors as well as anybody. It just seems for a guy who clearly knows basketball and has had
Yeah.
success, there seems to be a stain associated with his name. What's the story with Mark Jackson?
Well, this is the difficulty, and this is why when situations go awry, that coaches and front office people are so careful not to be critical of ownership, because it's an old boys club, and right or wrong, if it looks as if you're being critical of an owner, if it looks as if you're going out the door and you're saying this guy doesn't know what he's doing, or this guy was difficult to work with, well, every owner looks at that and says, eventually I'm going to fire this guy.
Mm-hmm.
It happens. Nobody stays the head coach or the general manager forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that's what I'm going to get going out the door, is that a direction that I really want to go? And to top it off, the innuendo afterward was that Mark was difficult, and Mark didn't take kindly to input from ownership, particularly on basketball matters. Well, again, you not only have owners who want to be in on all of the decision-making, like the personnel decision-making, which is something that has changed certainly over the last 10 years, I think in every sport, but they also have their siblings. They have their sons and daughters working for the team. And that was one of the issues here. And you look around, that's a situation, whether it's the Chicago Bulls, whether it's the Golden State Warriors, you can find that in the Miami Heat. I mean, go around. That's in a lot of situations. And so, again, it's a template where if you're just looking at it from a basketball perspective, I agree with you. Mark did a hell of a job. And if he doesn't get a job this time around with all not only the openings that are there now,
Mm-hmm.
but the anticipated openings,
Yep.
then I don't know when he ever will, because then the stain truly is perhaps irreparable.
Wow,
We'll see where it goes.
Rick, it sounds like he's been blackballed in a way. You don't want to admit that there's this
Yep.
cabal going on around professional sports, but that's what it sounds like.
Well, that's the struggle that I have with all the things that were said about him, and the innuendo about he didn't work hard, or he didn't. All the people in the organization didn't like him. All of that, and there's people still in the organization now who are very quiet about it, but people that I've talked to who say that's the thing that I hate the most, and that he has been portrayed in a way that simply is not accurate. And what happened, once upon a time, it wasn't whether you were hobnobbed with the owner or not, it's whether you won. What did you do on the floor? What did you do in your job?
Yeah, remember those days?
And and he did a hell of a job. And you can look around, and Vinny Del Negro could make the same case. Lionel Hollins could make the same case. It's no longer. It's funny, from a fantasy sports standpoint, I think we have fans out there that don't appreciate the chemistry on teams and how important that is. And in another respect, we have owners and we have teams that operate, and it's, well, you did a great job, but you know what? You didn't take my advice when I gave it all the time, or you seem to be a little reluctant to take it. So I think we're going to go in another direction. I struggle putting my arms around that type of thing.
I don't disagree. Talking to Ric Bucher, of course. Rick with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio, Bleacher Report Radio. That's where Rick is every single day. Warriors insider as well, and has been around the NBA a long time and is quite informed.
Now, Rick, you are definitely in tight with the Warriors, and we all know about Steph Curry not playing Game 2, maybe won't play Game 3, but almost doesn't matter, which brings us to the Rockets, who are in an interim transition type mode right now, trying to figure out what they're going to do after this series is over, likely in a sweep. But Jeff Van Gundy's name is getting tossed around a little bit, and I couldn't remember how he left, so I went back and looked it up, and it was kind of like, I don't really want to coach anymore, but I'll give you guys your blessing to go search for someone, and then they come back and they find someone under their new GM, Daryl Morey, and it's like, all right, you're out, and the new guy is in. Is this going to be awkward if this kind of transition happens back to Van Gundy?
I don't know that it would be awkward. I mean, we've seen Don Nelson after seeing Don Nelson come back to the Golden State Warriors after everything that happened the first time around.
Mm-hmm.
I have suspended belief that anything is impossible. So I wouldn't say that it would be awkward. It's a matter of an owner looking at it and saying we haven't done anything for a long time after winning championships back with Hakeem Olajuwon. I'll do whatever is necessary to get us there. And on the flip side, the feeling is that Jeff needs to, if Jeff is going to come back to coaching, he needs to do it fairly soon. That there's a point at which you're forgotten as a head coach. And even among players in the league, you can be on TV, but it's a little bit like the John Gruden phenomenon.
Yeah.
Every once in a while his name comes up. Every once in a while it's discussed. You talk to people in the NFL, and they're like, "We're not." It's a great show on ESPN. The quarterback camp is interesting, but is he going to be able to walk into a locker room and sell that, or is he looked at as a guy that just talks a lot of stuff on TV?
Mm-hmm.
There's a shelf life being on TV before people forget that you were actually a coach once upon a time. So Jeff's looking at Minnesota. He's looking at Houston. The thing that he wants, and if they're moving Daryl Morey and J.B. Bickerstaff out, is that Jeff would have control over both. And that's another thing that I have real issue with. You guys tell me. I can't remember the last time a GM/head coach was successful in the NBA.
Oh, listen, Rick, I lived through it with the Knicks with Isaiah. That was a mess. It's very tough to do both jobs, if not impossible. I'm with you. I totally agree.
I think it's impossible. You have to be in the trenches with these guys, and yet then you have to stand back and you have to make objective decisions on personnel and keep the long view. This is the most important thing. Coach is trying to win every day, every season, every time out, and a GM has to be thinking about the overall health of the team and looking forward. I don't know anybody that is capable of doing those at the level that is necessary to be successful in the NBA.